You need to use that book to understand where you are and have a relationship with your God. That book is important. And then the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord. And I love all this. It said to keep his commandments. First to walk, to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with what? All their hearts. If we are half-stepping, God does not want us. We need to be going about fully doing what God would expect us to do, that we'll be able to make heaven our abode. Remember, you only have two choices. One is heaven, and the other one is hell. And that's really not a good choice to look at. Anybody with any degree of intelligence would be saying, I want to go to heaven. And all the people stood. 4 things I want to leave with you tonight. Recognize our state. Do you understand exactly where you are? Sometimes I look at Uris Robertson Jr. and I'm just appalled. I'm just disgusted with where I am. I know I need to be evangelizing more. I know I need to be talking to people more. I know I need to be studying more. I know I need to be praying more. I know what I need to do. And I have the Bible here as a reference to see. But sometimes it's not always easy to get it right. Willing to change. Willing to stand and have a steadfast allegiance to God. We must have that allegiance. We must have that relationship, that uniqueness that we have with God. Do you have an allegiance to God? Is it to your wife? To your husband? To your mama? To your father? Whom is your allegiance to? And we must have that allegiance to God. So as I look at my lesson tonight, I want to make sure that as I repledge, renegotiate, recirculate, revamp, revive, come back to a realization of a point that I'm looking at me. And I've got to see all of my misconceptions, my misunderstanding, and it's so good to see my son-in-law come in here. Nothing like a good son-in-law. And so we see all these things, and we look at ourselves and begin to understand, I'm looking at you and you looking at somebody else, but you got to stop and look at you. You are your worst enemy. You are your worst problem. If you can get rid of you, you can go to heaven. When I thought about the judgment, I went to Revelation 6, and you know it's got to be bad when they know that Jesus is coming and they are begging, literally begging for the rocks to fall on them. Man, you know that's got to be bad. They know how terrible it is. They know that when Jesus gets back here to finalize the judgment, they're in trouble. But I want to be able to know that when Jesus comes, that when he sees me, I don't want him to see Uris Robertson Jr. I want Jesus to see a reflection of himself. Yes, sir. Because if he sees any part of me, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I'm trying in this journey, and each one of us should be trying to make sure, for we must all appear. And I know there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. To the atheists, to the denominationalists, to those people in other religions, the Buddhists, the Hindus, and all of those, that every one of us are going to appear before the what? The judgment seat of who? Of Christ. And we're going to have to give an account of how we've done and what we've done with ourselves. My lesson tonight is about a young man by the name of Josiah. But I decided to go back and get some history. You know, we need to look at where we came from. What kind of grandfather did you have? What kind of uncle do you have? My family tree does not go good up in the Church of Christ. But I went back to Josiah and I looked at Uzziah. Anybody know Uzziah? Yes, sir, you know him. He was a young man that was 16 years of age, became king of Israel. Now, at 16, if I had been in this generation, I'd been like these young boys walking around with their pants hanging off of them. At 16, he became the king of Judah. And you see how the changes that this young man has to go. Then I look at and I see Jotham. He's partial. Uzziah is righteous. Ahaz, his son, is evil. Hezekiah is righteous. Manasseh grew up in the house with Hezekiah, but something happened. That boy lost his mind. Literally lost his mind. And went far to the left or to the right. Became a servant of the devil. Until God sent some adversities on him. And when he got up after all those thorns and the pain and agony, then he come running back and began to change his life. Then I went on down to Ammon, his son. And you know, sometimes we look around and we start talking about somebody when their children are not doing right. But you must look at this book and look at the Bible. There were some brothers that had a problem in the very beginning in the garden. Hello? And as we go up, you remember the one by the name of Aaron with his sons, there were problems. Samuel had problems. Eli had problems. You're going to have some bad eggs among us. And so Ammon was bad. They killed him. His servants killed him. And then they turned around and got him. Now we're in at Josiah. How old is Josiah? 8 years of age. Can you imagine trying to become the king of the world, king of Israel, king of Judah at 8 years of age? At 8 years of age, I didn't even know how to make toast. At 8 years of age, I didn't have a lick of sense. Really, at 50 years of age, I didn't have much. You see what I'm saying? And so God looked down and took this young man and made him king of Israel. What an awesome responsibility. Now remember, we're talking about great-great-great-grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and we come on down. Now, I love this in Jeremiah. What Jeremiah, the responsibility was put on Jeremiah. And it falls on him and behooves each one of us. God says, see, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out, to pull down, to destroy, to throw down, to build, and to plant. You know, we often want to build on some bad ground. Lost a friend of mine some years ago in this particular place where his home was built. They had a plant there, and the waste from the plant was in the soil, and it affected him to the point that it eventually killed him. If you don't get rid of all that stuff, if you don't go through and take all that garbage out of your life, you know, sometimes we like to hide the stuff that we've done. But you got to just tell it just like it is and be honest with yourself. So you got to tear it down. What did Josiah have to do, church? He had to go in and make temple alterations. Why? Those people up there in the past had gone into the temple and they had done everything they were big enough to do. And Josiah's responsibility was to go back into the temple and correct it. Remove the high places. Remove the sodomites. Destroy the worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Get all that out. This is our responsibility in the church. Anything that's wrong, get it out. Even if it's me, get me out. Get the church right. Because you're trying to build a foundation for people to go to heaven. You remember a few years ago, there was a rocket that was launching out to go out into space. And y'all remember what happened to it. One mistake and lives were lost. That's all it takes. One sin that you let go on and fester can kill you. And so he had the obligation and responsibility to go in and root out all that stuff, to tear it down, and then come back and begin to rebuild. Y'all know about Molech sacrifices in the valley of Hinnom, where they would go down and sacrifice their children to the gods. And then he had to deal with Jeroboam. And you know the history of Jeroboam. You remember those two boys, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam was the son of Solomon. And then God, because of Solomon's action and lifestyle, God split the kingdom. Gave 2 boys, 2 tribes to Rehoboam, but to Jeroboam, he gave 10. Jeroboam got smart. He said, now if I let them go back to Jerusalem, if I let them go back up there and worship, they're going to turn against me. That's what's happening in the churches of Christ. We're getting so smart that we've got to do everything to keep the membership. Let God do it. And as a result of it, he started something that went on for generations and generations. Now, I have a garden at home. Anybody got a garden? I'm going to be biased if you got something good. Because I got some weeds in mine. I started late. But in order to do, you got to remove the weeds, the sticks and stones, the vines, the thorns, the roaches, the termite. You got to level the soil. You got to get the ignorance out by teaching godliness, confusion. And you know one of the things that we have a problem with in the church is disfellowship. That's my brother. That's my second cousin. That's my daddy's 3rd child. Doesn't matter who it is. If that child needs to go, disfellowship it. God said in the Old Testament, I love this one, and he said, Jeremiah, he said, you are a watchman. What is a watchman? You watch. You make sure. You look at it. I'm sorry, that's Ezekiel. You look at everything. You double check everything. You make sure I made a mistake on this. You double check what? Everything. You go through and analyze it and make sure. Then I went down to Deuteronomy 17, 2 through 5, Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 15. We ain't doing this. It says when you hear Brother Robertson is over in Hawkins, Texas, and he's got a piano over there in there, worship. It says when you hear about it, you go and find out. Then if you confront Brother Robertson, if he's unwilling to change, then you disfellowship him. Now in the Old Testament, it was a little bit different. Somebody might say it was a little sweeter. No. Whenever you were found doing something wrong, they killed you and got rid of you because they wanted to make sure that you were a positive example and not a negative one. Preach the truth. Galatians 6:2, I am my brother's keeper. Mark those. Mark the right and mark the wrong. We have problems marking people. We hang with this group over here and that group over there. But you got to get to the point in life that you make a decision to stay with God. This fellowship, restoration. How do we restore people? You restore them by godly punishment. That brother walks in there and nobody looks at him. Laying up with another woman, had 5 or 6 different women in the last 6 months, and you up there in the church shaking his hand. When you ignore him, first go through the process, and everybody collectively ignore him. You don't exist. Give him some paranoia mentally. He walks in the church and everybody act like he doesn't exist. And that's what God wants us to do. And on the Old Testament, you kill him. Now, don't y'all kill nobody. Don't say Brother Robinson said do it. Don't go there. God's warning must be heeded. Why? And I love this in Deuteronomy 13:11. And all Israel shall hear. When you disfellowship here at North Glen, and they know, the membership know, the elders ain't going to take it, the members are not going to take it, the preacher's not going to take it, you come up in here acting crazy, they disfellowship you, and then the rest of the members look around, I better not do that. I better get my life, what? Together. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness. And then the last from Deuteronomy 17:13 said, do no more presumptuously. We are in a position. Now, do you have an allegiance with somebody that you shouldn't have? I looked at Jehoshaphat. Oh, he just blew it. He hung with Ahab. Who do you hang out with? You have any Ahabs in your life? In the 22nd chapter of 1 Kings, there was a problem, so Ahab was going to correct it. Jehoshaphat said, I'll go with you. He said, I am as thou art, my people as thou people, my horses thy horses. That was the dumbest thing he ever said. Really, he should not have done that. So they went into battle. And y'all know the story. And he told him to dress up like a king. And I'm going to dress up like a what? A servant. And you know that's a setup. You got people in the church, but do you like that? And so he went in, and of course he thought, using that carnal mind that he had, that nothing would happen. But of course God was in control, and he died, and Jehoshaphat walked away. In each one of the situations we see in life, we come to points that we make mistakes. You watch who you hang with, even if it's your husband or your wife. Yeah, I know y'all getting quiet now. I love my hubby. If your hubby taking you to hell, you better watch out. I love my wife. Yeah, she watches my back. Does she come to church? Is she faithful? Is she committed to God? Does she have an allegiance to God? Is she trying to renegotiate a connection with God? I love my mama. Yeah, we know that you might have not had a daddy, and that was tough. And your mama was your daddy and your mama. But that don't mean you follow her to hell. You have to make a decision on who you're going to follow. For whatsoever things are written before time were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scripture might have hope. And I love this. It's telling us that we have hope. In spite of the circumstances of things going on. These are some of the problems that we're having in the churches of Christ right now. This is just a tidbit of it. Titles, worship pattern, membership, fellowship. Are you fellowshipping with Mount Moriah Baptist Church? The Seventh-day Adventists? Are you sitting up at the table with people that you shouldn't be sitting at the table with? What's up with you? These are things you begin to look at. Well, that's my son, and I got to go and support my son. I got to support my son-in-law or my whatever because they are my family. But if it's against God, you make up your role. The role of the women, the qualification of leaders. Are you qualified? Number of leaders doing worship. And what I'm talking about is when you have song service, how many song leaders do you have up there? When you have some preaching, do you have 10 preachers stand up there preaching? Hello? You know, whatever you're doing, and so you got to make sure that you do everything appropriately and properly, that God will be pleased with it. And you do it according to what God would have you to do. Well, he told me a few minutes ago that I had 30 minutes, and I told him I'm the first speaker, and I'm supposed to have 50 minutes. And he looked at me very strange. And now he come up, and so it must be 40 minutes have already gone. And you see the relationship that we have with God is that we must do what? Denominational practices. You go off into the denominational world. You go to a church and you sit down and they got something going and it sure looks good. And you bring that arsenic back to the church. And you put it in the communion and wonder why everybody's dying. I don't care how good it looks. If it's not from God, leave it alone. And that's what we're doing. We've got to increase the membership. We got to do this. These are things that we need to get away. And one of the things that I'm looking at is shacking. And then marriage, divorce, and remarriage. That's this is a subject that a bunch of leaders need to sit down and members need to sit down and talk about. Because even in the church, there are so many different renditions of what God said in Matthew 19:5 and Luke 16. We need to make sure, because somebody, if I'm wrong in what I'm teaching, somebody's going to hell. And it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. It matters only what God said. So it behooves us to study it and go in with an open heart. Make sure that we're doing it according to what God said. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus, that we all speak to what? God is saying, good hooked up. How in the world can 10 people get in one car? You're going to have some arms and legs. You're going to have some feet all hooked up with somebody else. But we've got to figure out how to unify and get together in that car. So we can keep on rolling. If you don't watch out, somebody will be kicked out. But that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind, the same judgment. Since we are kings and priests unto God. Isn't that something? How does that sound? You're a king. Yeah? We're kings and what? Priests. Okay? I'm a priest. I'm a king. I'm somebody. In Exodus 19, it was prophesied. Stated in Revelation 1:6, 5:10, 17:14, 19:16, and of course 1 Peter 2:9. We are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people that should strive and thrive to live righteously before God and the world. Why? The world is watching us. Everything you do, the world is watching you. The other day, somebody wanted to do something, and I had to tell them they couldn't do it at our congregation. They wanted to do it. They called me as a member of the church and said, Brother Robertson, can I do this? And I said, no, brother. That will bring a reproach upon the church. And so the world is watching us. They want an excuse to continue lying. They want an excuse to continue fornicating. They want an excuse to continue divorce, remarriage. And they want an excuse to do everything. Finally, we should be like Josiah. At 8, 16, 20, Josiah stepped up to the plate. And he just kept on stepping. And I can't, in my wildest imagination, figure how a boy so young could be so committed. At 8 years of age, Josiah stepped up to the plate. How can this be? And when he stepped up, he didn't half step. But he kept on stepping. And kept on stepping. I'm going to stop a minute. I'm going to back up. His great-great-great-grandfather made a mistake. Okay? He was a righteous man. But he got excited. And the Bible said when he was strong, he decided to go where? Into the temple. What did he do in the temple? He thought, I'm king, and I ought to be able to make some sacrifices to God. And those priests looked at him, and they came at him, and then finally God put some leprosy on him, and he got out of there and lost everything behind being strong. He made a mistake. When I look at Hezekiah, as I close, Hezekiah has chapters written in Isaiah, 2nd Chronicle, and also in 2nd Kings. Isaiah, he has this man, Hezekiah, was great. But all at once, he got sick. And at the end of when he got sick, God told Isaiah, go in there and tell him, you're going to die, man. And so what did he do? He turned his head to the wall. How many times do you turn your head to the wall and begin to talk to God? How many times do you cry all night long, asking God to help you with your drug-addicted child, with your husband that's mad all the time, with your wife that won't come home? And so he turned his head to the what? To the wall. And what did he say? He began to tell God how he had lived. And before Isaiah could get out of the building, he said, go back and tell him, I'm going to give him what? 15 more years. Boy, I've got a friend of mine down in Houston. They're telling him if he doesn't go through this procedure, he might be able to live 3 months. But if he's going to do what he needs to do, he will be able to get maybe 1 to 3 years. And so we begin to see what happens here. And it's up to each one of us to make a critical decision. Finally, we should be like Josiah, removing all ungodliness from our lives. Fellow saints, help them remove their garbage and the church of Christ. Our mission and commission is to do what God wants us to do. And we must steadfastly repledge an allegiance to the God of Israel. He's never failed. He's always there. And when everybody cut you loose, he'll pick you up and bring you in. God bless you and God keep you.
Getting us started off. Amen. We're going to have a little change in the service. Is there anyone that's here that have not communed? Hold your hand up. We need brothers to come forward.